What's up guys, Akariss here, bringing you another Fire Emblem Heroes video. Today's video is going to be similar to the last impressions video, but this time we're going to cover seasonals. And special hero banners in general are going to be a little bit different in how I approach them versus a permanent banner. And this is mostly going to be with regards to Spark. But nonetheless, it is worth discussion and the dual skills. So with that being said, enjoy the video folks.
Let the lesson begin.
Alright guys, so same as old impressions videos, reactions, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to go through the video one by one, stop it at every character, and give you my impression on them. Before we begin this though, I want to make it clear the difference between something like Ingrid, who is like a one-off sparkable hero, means like you could guarantee a copy of them and use them. Or in the case of like a dual skill on like Ingrid, Marianne, you can basically give that to someone. You can give that as fodder, and that's a guarantee. I am very opposed to the idea of trying to gamble any of these characters and seasonals in general. But if you happen to nab them, or you really, really wanted to commit to them, I'll give you my best impression of them. So let's go. Of course, first up is Severa, as permitted. Predicted.
Have a very happy spring.
He's already in the game. Yeah, kind of. Alright, so she comes with R Duel Cav 4. We're going to cover that later in the video. And of course G Duel Flying 4, which is on this video. So she comes with a lot of good fodder, definitely. And if you weren't going to pick up for R Duel Cav 4, which by the way is definitely worth picking up, like if you have some of the characters I'll cover later, but it's definitely worth a consideration at the very least. I don't expect this to be like a Spark or something you can get in a couple banners. I really don't. I think they might actually keep the cavalry line on seasonals to be more exclusive, and like older dual skills are likely going to be on like normal banners where they expect you to Spark or summon for them. Okay, so her weapon is basically a conditional Brave Tome. And the part that it is conditional, it makes me a bit hesitant for me to call it great. Slaying Brave is good. I mean, that's what Linja has. She's a flyer cultist. But there's a couple of drawbacks that I don't appreciate here, which is, of course, she's seasonal. There's no guarantee that you'll get her. It might be a lot of orbs to get something like +1. However, I do think she'll be really good, but that condition really makes it kind of like in comparison. I'm not so sure. I wouldn't just recommend something like Duel Lif instead of this, or even Duel Sigurd, and both of those likely will have a lot of utility compared to this. And like SM Erica exists, she negates penalties, so that's also really good because you can really buff her up with a lot of stuff and never really worry about debuffs at all. So I like it. I think she's going to be very good, potentially very good, but I don't see you wanting to merge R Duel Cav 4, first of all. She's on a seasonal. That's, you know, that's not a guarantee. So, the condition itself isn't super difficult. I mean, if it's like on a rally, you know, a rally trap, like that's already fine. Like a dancer dancing her, like you'll get it off if you make a team for it. And on offense, again, you can just, you know, smite, and you're going to make that condition. The condition isn't difficult, but it is there, and that already makes me kind of about it. Yay, eggs and bunnies, let's go.
Don't you dare doze off.
I highly suspect she'll come with high attack and speed. I wouldn't put it, see it any other way. Alright, we have Inigo again.
I know, I look ridiculous.
I don't think so. Alright, so green bow flying with G Duel Flying 4. G Duel Flying 4, as we'll discuss later, isn't actually as appealing as R Duel Cav 4, which of course, when we get to the dual sections, you'll see what I'm talking about. But basically, he comes with an inheritable bow, so, you know, him as a unit is like nothing. I wouldn't consider like investing into Inigo as a unit unless he's literally one of your favorite characters. In terms of viability, this guy's strictly fodder. He has Rally Plus, a really desirable Rally Plus, a new line of dual skills, and an attack speed Rhine, which I think previously is basically on Brave Claude. And the weapon itself is okay. It's not amazing, but it's okay. It gives you attack and speed. Foe condition above 75% isn't super difficult to meet. and of course it neutralizes attack and speed penalties. So it's okay on maybe some carry units that have really good attack and speed, but I couldn't even think of a candidate off the top of my head, which is why it doesn't really appeal to me. Like Setsuna has basically a similar weapon, you know, for example. Yeah, I mean he himself isn't really that interesting, but at least he comes with tons of fodder.
Rabbits, eggs, and pretty colors.
So we had
This
Est,
festival is full of adorable
Patria,
decorations.
Ala, Narcian, and now Minerva. Okay, so Minerva is the 4-star focus of this banner. So you can get a lance that basically neutralizes penalties. As we'll see later in the Tempest Trials that we're gonna get, you get an axe for free. Another axe, yes. But yeah, I mean, the weapon's inheritable. It's nice, I guess. I really can't recommend it over so many other good options in the game already. We already have like Flowing Lance, I believe Spirited Spear, we have Guild Fork, so there's already a really Curtain, Slaying Lance even, like there's already so many good options that I couldn't really see this standing out compared to those. It's another option, but it's not necessarily gonna carry you. And of course the 4-star focuses tend to have better fodder, like attack defense solo is pretty nice to be seen here, but whatever. Another Blue Lance Flyer, right? Blue Lance Cav, sorry.
I am a princess and a warrior.
I couldn't see her being that much better than someone like Petrine, for example.
Are these bunny ears? Look, I've got some too. We can do this.
Another seasonal Myrrh, also featured with Na, I believe. Okay, it's not a duel, it's a harmonious, so that means it won't score as high potentially. It's still gonna score pretty high because it's Myrrh, of course, but generally not as high as duels could. Okay, so this is a Slaying Breath. Slaying Breaths aren't that common, that's already good. And it has like an enemy phase condition, foe initiates combat. A lot of dragons play like this, grants you a bunch of stats, but here's the interesting thing. As long as you enemy phase the enemy, you always get a 40% damage reduction, unless you play against like Deadeye or Lif, of course. But generally speaking, that's crazy. Or Altina, that's also there. But anyways, so like that's not a defense condition. That's not a res condition, not a speed. You just get 40% damage reduction, enemy phasing everything. That's a first, and it is fairly good. She comes with basically a kit ready to go. Noontime Distant Counter Dragon's Ire Attack Res Rhine. That's you're good to go. You literally have this character and you're gonna be carrying through lots of stuff. But could I really see this being more interesting than that? I don't know. Her Harmonious skill, as we'll see in a bit, is basically IO shield, so you wouldn't have to use an IO shield. But again, if you run into, let's say, an AR offense, into dual hindrance buildings, you can't rely on using that skill, and therefore you could be at risk, you know, maybe not using this team. Is the unit want to compete with summoner support? Do you want to spend, you know, do you want to gamble for a carry like this? Again, I can't really promote this idea. In Resonant Battles itself, summoning heroes, harmonious heroes like this for Resonant Battles isn't that appealing. So again, seasonals are not like so cut clear. This is a good unit and it's definitely a fan favorite, but the fact that you can't guarantee this summon makes it fairly questionable. Maybe you want to wait for a double seasonal, maybe you want to wait for some event where they're showing up, not here. And yeah, what more can I say? It's good. There's nothing, I'm not gonna argue with the viability of the unit. Bunny Dragon's cute, but so yeah, the Harmonious skill, basically it's IO shield, some extra attack and speed, and that's pretty much it. Like, it's not that interesting beyond that.
We're bunnies. Bunny sounds.
Yay!
Spring is
Actually, I
here.
believe there was an additional effect, so let me just reverse it for a second. For your allies, probably. So, foe cannot make a follow-up attack. Okay, yeah, that's basically like Warrior Fighter. That's not bad, especially since they have Dragon's Ire. So it's like no follow-up plus itself, no follow-up plus Warrior Fighter. It's not too bad. It kind of feels like a colorless Dragon Myrrh, but again, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, you'd have to spend a lot of premium resources for potentially just another of the same kind of carry. Her stats, as you can see, are 54, 25, 40, 35. So again, pretty similar to even like Halloween Grima, slow, bulky, high attack type of unit. Just relying on that Harmonized Skill to give you IO shield
Easy spring breezy.
is something that makes even a character like this fairly inconsistent, the way I see it. Okay, so we have given to us for free will be a green axe cav again, and I believe this is Saleh. I don't know, he's a sage. I thought it should have been a tome, I guess, but just, you know, give us more axes, right? But yeah, that's based on his skills, which are HP res, and I believe rouse attack res. He's probably like a res version of Male Chris, who we recently got. To me, that's just cav flowers and extra feathers. Not much more to it. The banner itself lasts a whole month, so you can wait until the mythic banner comes out. You can wait until Hero Rises passes, and probably the new heroes after that, just to kind of guess what your options up are after that. So I don't know what more I can really say, guys. I'm not super impressed with seasonals. They're definitely more harder to justify, like in terms of wanting to commit your orbs, because at this point IS is like, okay, here's a dual cavalry skill, you know, and to me that's like, okay, that's potentially really good, but I can't guarantee it. Do I really want to spend a month's worth of orbs to try to get that? Alright, the more important thing to talk about is the potential candidates of these dual skills, because either now or in the future you may want to get them. So let's actually talk about it. I've distributed this candidate kind of pool into the 3 and 4 star units, the 5-star premium units, and that's for both the R Duel Cav and the G Duel Flying 4. I'll show you exactly what to think of all the candidates. So here we are with the 3 and 4 star options. I do firmly believe that Titania or Elwood are the best options for this, and the reason for that is simple. Titania is the only red mage cav ranged, and even though she doesn't have a preference weapon, the fact that you can have like a unit that's 3 range, or 3 movement but 2 range, is great because you can really mess with rally AI that way in arena. So if you give this to someone like Titania, you give yourself a very good strategic advantage. Elwood just has an amazing weapon. You give him something like Gale Force and he can actually probably hit and run. Like he can go in, engage, and get out, which is very nice for someone like him. I believe that Kempf is a good way of setting up kills, especially for bonus units, so he does firmly stand in that slot beside Elwood and Titania, but I do think the other two are better. If you are one of the few who like merged up Valentine's Titania, you might want R Duel Cav. That is definitely appealing. Now at the top of A, I believe Xander is potentially set up to be really good. If they ever give those distant counter refines, Xander would easily use the R Duel skill the best, because right now he's basically held back by a distant counter weapon with nothing on it, no stats, anything like that. But the fact that he has that is already very good, because the A skill giving HP 5 and 2 to all stats is already really nice. And, you know, melee cav is great to have, or range cav in arena, just so you can mess with rally AI and basically putting yourself in the better positions. Running like armors or melee 2 range units, you'll see how it's much different than having a range cav or a melee cav in contrast. Now Ares is, again, he might be set up for a really good weapon refine, it should be pretty soon, and he already has good weapons anyways. Like Dark Mistletoe is already really good. If you combine that with something like Ruptured Sky or Blue Flame, he's basically shooting off specials all the time, and that makes him really good. At that point, if you've invested into Caden or Seth, I believe Seth for his supportive abilities deserves a mention here, so it saves you like rally. And he has a TA weapon to win against those that are technically triangle disadvantage versus him to secure those matchups, but there's not really much more going for him. Caden is more specific to team comps. If you run a lot of dragons or you run a lot of like beasts and such in your team, then Caden should fit in pretty nicely, but unfortunately that means he has to be far more specific. And finally, rounding out like the B slots, I like, no way. Stall has a Brave enemy phase TA weapon, which means he'll basically always win against greens, but he can't use distant counter, so that really limits him. And he's really old, like he has a very old stat spread that I just can't see him doing much without distant counter. Distant counter basically is needed for him to stand out, and he can't run it because of the dual skill. Finally, Kayn could work, but you want basically a full melee, not full, yeah, you do want melee calves, basically. You want other melee calves. So let's say you had like a legendary Ephraim or something in your fire core, and if they came out with G Duel Cav, then Kayn would be good in that sort of team. But that's too specific, and therefore he's gonna be at the bottom. And finally, Conrad, I don't think I even need to explain why he's there. There's nothing going for him. Finally, the premium options are a little bit different. Now, if you have a dual Cav skill and you are one of the few people who have like a +10 legendary Erica or +10 Hrid, that should be an instant inherit. And the reason for that is because they have B skills that score 300. Now, if you give them the Cav skill, the dual Cav skill, and another 300 SPC skill, they score like 180 units, not 175. That actually makes them better than legendary Elwood in scoring. Not necessarily better than legendary Elwood as a support or unit, but they could be due for like skill refines down the road through remixes, or maybe if you have them pretty high merge, you could consider finishing them off remixes, which could happen in the latter part of the year. So I think those two are set up nicely for the future. Erica is water as opposed to Hrid, who's wind. Erica's water is a lot better though. Now she's basically better than Fjorm in this case, for sure. But I'd say if forget that, if it's not the legendaries, the best candidate for this is by far going to be Regan if she's like +10. And the reason for that is because one, you save the blessings of her being an Astro Mythic, but two, Kanto is amazing. It's huge. That you would win Arena just off of Kanto because Regan has such great power, like such great nuking potential, and then the ability to get out easily without relying on like Gale Force. And then after that, with the premium options, I mean, basically if you have them, you know, I'm not going to say pull for these units. Range units dominate the top of these sort of dual skills, and then you just have like the better refined units, and then you have the clowns like Sigurd, and unfortunately Leth, who needs a full beast team to really shine, I would say. Finally, let's talk about G Duel Flying 4. So this is going to be a lot similar to G Duel Flying 3, which people may already be using. The dancers are definitely at the top here, but the problem with them is, of course, you take a score hit. You got to use dance as opposed, or dance and sing, and that hurts a little bit, but it's definitely nice flexibility to be able to use those characters whenever you are wanting an easier arena run. I believe She stands pretty closely up there with the dancers because of Panic Ploy Refine and a Brave Weapon. That will basically secure her kills against a vast array of units, and if she's not in combat, she's still providing Panic Ploy, which by the way is basically in all my arena teams. Finally, we got Minerva and Camilla. So Minerva just has a good preference weapon, but you lose her A preference skill by giving her G Duel Flying 4, which kinda sucks. Because that gives IOTs, it gives stats, and you don't really want to lose that. So all she has going for her is a preference weapon when you do this. Camilla, if you run other flyers or calves, now with R Duel Cav 4 being a thing, or legendaries that are calves, she's going to make a decent candidate for the support options, similar to like what Seteth does, but she has a decent stat spread for this and can benefit from all those stats. Finally, rounding out the end is pretty much units that don't have any sort of supportive capabilities or just don't have preference weapons yet. They could be better later, but honestly, G Duel Flying 4 just doesn't have good candidates in the 3-4 star pool. You never really got good units here. Finally, the premium options look way different, of course, because there's so many of them. Okay, so if you have Mythics, Triandra should by far be your first option if you have a +10 Triandra, or maybe a +9, just somewhere high merge there. If you have that, easy inherit there, because she actually doesn't have a score hit by using the dual skill due to her unique dance, scoring so highly. Some of the best candidates for this are going to be Grima, who recently got released. It's a small score increase, and you do technically lose out on that A skill, that she has a preference A skill, but it's fine. She's already a really good unit, even with her preference weapon and stat spread. Finally, Brave Micaiah should be due for refine later in the year. She has a good B skill that's supportive, and she has that armor and cav effectiveness. I could see Brave Micaiah by far being one of the better options here. Nino is really good, very, very good throughput. Tharja is basically being carried by her like stat spread at this point. She doesn't really stand out beyond that, so she would definitely fall down in rankings here if others got preference weapons to catch her up, which is what you see actually in the A section of the list here. So like Veronica and Snacky are actually fairly fairly due for a weapon refine of seasonals, and they could easily get into the S tier of potential candidates for this. So it might be, if you get this, it could be worth holding on to it, and I could see it being in the permanent pool. Unlike the dual Cav skills, I could see them potentially adding these dual skills into the permanent pool, because you know there already is a G Duel Flying 3, so that's what I'm going off of. The other stuff is pretty self-explanatory. Reinhardt is actually pretty good as a combat unit, but unfortunately you have the score hit. Azura has no preference weapon and is a melee, so that kind of holds her back, but she's still a dancer at the end of the day. Then you have some really old or just units who don't really have much going for them. So Camilla is just really old. Innis has no preference weapon. Myrrh is decent, but melee doesn't really help here if you're not really powerful, in the case of like Levitain or Jill, who basically can smash through things without fear of retaliation. That's pretty much it, folks. I'd say that covers all the dual skills, how I feel about them, but with a seasonal, I'd be very cautious in trying to commit to this. I feel the people who should are those that have legendaries or mythics that are basically max merge or near max merge, where you're going to give yourself a substantial score increase for arena. And yeah, with that being said, I'm done. I'll see you guys in the next one, folks. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next one. Much love. Peace.
It's over.